Welcome to our intro tutorial on how to make wheels for a Sumo bot, and also your first intro to Autodesk Inventor 2015. Now the version I'm using is Inventor 2013, but there isn't too much of a difference, so we shouldn't have a problem. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new IPT file. So the way I do that is I first open up Inventor, as you can see. I click on New, which is in the top left-hand corner, and then what you'll see is you'll see these templates. Now there's a chance that when you click on it, you'll see the general templates that are always used, but we want to make sure we choose a metric template because all our measurements are in metric units. So I'm going to click on metric, and there's a whole bunch of standard millimeter, but you want to choose the one that says standard millimeter .ipt. So we're going to click on that, click create, and then now we have a workspace, a 3D workspace from which to work within. The first thing we're going to do is Inventor always needs you to draw a 2D version or a 2D face of a 3D object before you can make the whole 3D object. So we're going to start for our wheel. If you think about a wheel it's essentially a cylinder, and one of the faces is a circle. So that's actually the 2D drawing we're going to start with. So I click on create 2D sketch. There's a chance that 3D sketch might be selected, and if that's the case, you want to make sure that it doesn't look like this. If it is, what you want to do is you want to click down and then make sure you click on 2D sketch instead. Before I do that, I'm going to do one thing quickly. First, delete this 3D sketch I accidentally made. Okay, so this is what you should see in the top corner. If you don't, you just click on the drop down menu and create 2D sketch. Click on the corner over here, or on this plane. You'll see there's 3 planes representing X, Y, XZ, and ZY. And so I want to click on this plane right here, and it'll allow me to draw in there. I'm going to click on circle because that's the shape I want to draw. That's one of the faces of our wheel. And if I move my mouse around, you'll notice that it's moving freely. I want to create it right at the center over here, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on this little button at the bottom that says Snap to Grid. It's got a little magnet on it and has a picture of a grid. So I click on it. When I move my mouse, you'll notice it's getting stuck. So I'll click right there in the center because it's stuck to the center. I'm going to make an arbitrarily large circle. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to resize it. So I'm just going to make 21 millimeters or whatever it says over there. Then I'm going to unclick Snap to Grid because I don't need it right now. I'm going to general dimension it. So up in the top in your sketch bar, you see how it says green sketch. There's a whole bunch of tools. I'm going to click on dimension. Move my mouse to the outside of the circle, not the inside area, the outside edge. Click on it and then move my mouse away. Remember, you click once, don't click twice. And move your mouse away so that you can see that it's measuring the diameter and tells you what it is right now. So I'm going to click. And it'll ask me, well, how large do you want the diameter to be? For our case, our diameter is going to be 45 millimeters. So that's the constraint on everything you do. With your wheel, the diameter has to be 45 millimeters. So set that, hit enter. You'll notice now I have a slightly bigger wheel that's 45 millimeters in diameter. Now I'm going to click on Finish Sketch. And now I've got this circle. Now in order to make this circle 3D into a cylinder, I have to choose what's called the extrude function, where it'll take my shape and it'll make it 3D, as you can see in the little example that they show when I hover my mouse over it. So I click on extrude, and it automatically selects the circle because it's the only shape that's there. And right now it's going to make it a 10 millimeter thick wheel, but I want a 15 millimeter thick wheel. So type in 15, I'm going to hit check mark, and there we go. We've got our cylinder. So if I click on this box right here, I can rotate it and just click and hold while shifting around. I can rotate it, and then if I want to go back to the original view, I click on the little house key and it homes it back in. Now, one thing you might want to do, and so this is just to help you get a bit better with Inventor, is let's say I want to zoom in and zoom out. You probably saw me do that rather easily. I didn't explain how that was done. Well, on your mouse, you've got a mouse wheel. If you roll your mouse wheel back and forth, it'll allow you to zoom wherever your mouse is. Wherever your mouse is, it'll zoom in. Now, if you zoom in the wrong spot, let's say, and you want to drag the shape over, all you got to do is press and hold middle mouse click, and a little palm will appear. And you can shift your mouse around and move. It's called pan. It'll pan the shape into view. So roll back, zoom in, zoom out, pan. The other thing you can do is if you want to rotate, now I can click on the block and rotate it around just by clicking and holding on the little cube in the top right corner. Or I can press and hold shift while middle mouse clicking, and I can do the same thing, but without having to move all the way over wherever I am. Okay, so just a couple things. So let's quickly recap. Zoom in, zoom out, pan, shift, middle click to rotate. Okay, I'm going to click on the home button, so I'm back to where I was originally. And let's start by saying, I want to, now this wheel's really boring, so I want to add some sort of a design to it. So I've got an example opened up in Google Chrome. I'm going to try to make this wheel. Now it won't be exactly the same, but the pattern, the shape in the middle, that's what I'm going to go for. So let's go back to Inventor. And I want that shape to be up here. So I'm going to go to Create Sketch. I'm going to click on the top space because I'm going to draw it on there, draw the shape I need on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to draw the entire shape. So if I click back here, you'll notice I've got a whole bunch of holes right here, and they're all these triangular holes with rounded edges. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw only one of the shapes, and I'm even just going to start by drawing half of one shape. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'll start by making a line starting from the center. Remember how it snaps to the center? All the way to the top, and then finish by clicking where it snaps to the edge of my drawing. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the shape I want. So let's start by drawing, let's say, a triangle. Okay, or one side of my triangle. So I'm going to draw one line. In fact, I'm going to have it snap up here. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make another circle. This might seem a bit odd, but just bear with me. I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to move my mouse to click on circle, move my mouse to the center again, and make the circle so it's not nearly, my old circle was 45 millimeters. I'm going to make this circle, let's see, 45 millimeters is the diameter of my circle. Maybe I'll make it 40. So I'll type in, without clicking, I'm just going to type in 40 and it'll automatically make a 40 millimeter diameter circle. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some trimming. So let's start by clicking on trim. The trim function will allow me to get rid of extra lines. I'm going to click on that because I don't want this. I'm going to click on the edge here because I don't want that. And then finally I'm going to click up here because I don't need this top line right here. So now I've sort of got that shape. It's not quite there. I'm still missing the rounded edges. And what you'll also notice is that when I drew my triangle, my line over here, I didn't start from the center. And the reason for that is if I start from the center, well, I'll show it to you in a bit, but if I start from the center, I'll basically lose all of the center when I recopy that pattern. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to round off the edges. So I'm going to click on the arc function. And I'm going to choose somewhere in the edge over here. And then maybe this arc function works is I have to choose the one corner, the middle, and then the other one. So let's try that again. So see there? So I clicked on one edge, the other edge, and then I rounded it off. Do the same thing here. Edge, and I'm going to round it off a little. Oh, wait. Let me zoom in a little so I get a better view. There we go. I want it to be a little bit curved, not fully curved. Use the trim function yet again to get rid of the extra lines. And now I'm going to use a function called mirror. So you see I've done half the design. Click on mirror, select the shape, the edges of the shape I just drew, and then I'm going to click on mirror line to select the center mirror line, and I'm going to hit apply. And you'll notice it's automatically mirrored over my image. Click on done. I don't need this line anymore. I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to go finish sketch. So now you can see is I've got my shape already made. And you'll notice that I didn't draw the bars like what's solid. I draw what I was going to cut out, because rather than make this shape 3D, I'm going to remove that material from my wheel. So I'm going to click on extrude, and I'm going to select the shape. Now you might have a bit of trouble selecting it, so just move your mouse around until it selects the shape you want to select. Click on that, and you'll notice it's making it 3D in a way I don't want it to. So instead I'm going to select, if I move my mouse over here, now there's a chance that you might see this when you click on extrude. So if that's the case, there should be a little arrow, you just click on that. Move your mouse over to the cut function. I'm choose cut, and then for my distance I'm going to go all. And you'll notice, and I'm just going to rotate this using the shift middle click, that it's cut all the way through. So I'll go OK. Finish that up. And now I've kind of got my shape. But you're probably thinking, well, it's one shape. That one has, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I'm now going to use is what's called an array function. This is called a circular pattern. It's another word for it is array. I'm going to click on circular, and it asks me to select the feature. So I'm going to move my mouse until I select that thing I just cut out. You'll see that. And then it says the rotation axis. Now what this means is, what do you want me to rotate around? Well, I want to rotate around this circle that wheel that I've created. So I'll select the edge of the circle, and then all you gotta do is type in how many. So 6. You could type in 7, but you'll notice the more I type in, the closer they get. So I could go 5, I could go 3, I could go 2. I can change whatever number I want here, and it'll rotate it 360 degrees. I thought 7 worked pretty well actually for the spacing, so I'm going to choose that instead, even though the other design had 6. And now I've got myself a wheel. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to save this file, and we are going to come back to it. So this is not a finished copy. This is our version 1 of the file. So we've made some major changes to our wheel, and we want to save it every single time. So first off, we're going to click on iPro, click on Save As, and we're going to name this your name. So for me, I'll put my last name, maybe in all caps actually, sorry, all caps. The name, which is wheel, you can call it Sumo wheel if you'd like to. And this is my first version of it, so I'm going to call version 1. Every single time you make a modification, you save it as a different version. That way if something goes wrong, you can always go back to your previous version. So the next time I modify this, and we'll do this shortly, I'm going to save it as version 2. So for now it's version 1, this is my first version. Save, and I'm done. Now what we're going to do is, in a separate video I'll show you how to add some other features, some other tricks and tips for making this thing even prettier, so it's the prettiest wheel out there. But the first thing we have to do is we have to make a hole in the wheel for the axle. Now the axle is, and you've already done this, you've made a Tamiya motor. The axle is the bar that will stick into the wheel, and as the motor turns, cause the wheel to turn. And it has a very interesting shape. It's actually hexagonal, so it's not a circular, like a cylindrical rod. It's a hexagonal rod. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by, and now this depends on how you want your wheel to look. I like to make a hole that goes all the way through the wheel, and part of the reason is because if you need to adjust where your wheel sits, you can move it around. However, if you make the hole only go halfway through the wheel, so there's nothing shown on the outside over here, there's a chance that you might need to shove the wheel in more because it doesn't fit in our sizing box, or there's many reasons why. So I highly suggest that you follow this exactly, even when making a custom wheel. So as with always, we want to start a new sketch, and I'm going to draw the shape of the hole on top over here, because I'm going to make the hole directly through the center right here. So okay, so great, I've got my sketch started. Now, one thing that might happen is if you are using Inventor 2013, I think 1 or 2 computers still has it, there's a function called auto project edges that's selected. It can be great in some situations, but in this situation it's going to be my major pain. You'll notice that there are these green lines. If I zoom out, it's actually easier to see. Green lines, what it's done is it's automatically drawn lines around the edges of all the shapes that I had, around all the holes that I'd cut originally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and hold and drag a box around this entire thing, and click delete. And the reason for this is when I'm trying to select the shape I want to extrude, these lines will make it more confusing for Inventor to figure out what it is that you actually want to extrude. So whenever you're starting a sketch or making a sketch, you want to make sure that there's no doubt for Inventor what shape you want to extrude. So you don't want extra lines around unless you absolutely need them. So the next thing we're going to do, so now that I've given you that little bit of background, I want to make a hexagonal hole. You notice there's no hexagon function, but there is a polygon function. So I click on it, and hexagon, hex stands for 6. So I'm going to choose 6, because it's already written there. Click on done, and move my mouse around. Whoops, let's try this out. Whoops, sorry, once again, we've got to click on polygon. You don't click on done. You've got to move your mouse over here. And you might notice it's having a little bit of trouble snapping, so I'm going to use this guy here, one right here, and you notice it snaps to the center again. This is the reason we've done this in the first place. Click, and I'm going to make an arbitrarily large hexagon. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to go done. I'm going to unclick the snap to grid. I'm going to click on dimension, and this is where you have to be really careful. This step has to be done. I want a dimension so that from one flat edge to the other, it's 3 millimeters. So I click on one edge after clicking on general dimension, click on the other flat edge, and I move my mouse away so I see that it's saying the distance between those two sides is, and I want to set that to 3 millimeters. Now that that's done, I've actually made my hexagonal hole. I'm actually done right here. So I click finish. I go to extrude. And like I said, if you had those other shapes, Inventor would have asked you which one do you want, and it might have been hard to select it. But since I don't, it automatically selects the only drawing there. I'm going to move the mouse the other way. I can drag it through, or I can select cut all. So cut, and then all. And I go OK, and now I've got a hexagonal hole. And the best thing about this, not the perfect thing, is that the 3D printer will be able to make that hole almost exactly to spec. So, there we go. So now that we've finished our hexagonal hole, we're going to save it. But we're not going to go and save right over it. So if I click on this, and I'm not going to, it's going to just overwrite my previous file. And if something happens, and let's say I'm working on it, and it gets corrupt, I lose everything. So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to save it, but not as version 1, but I'm going to change this to version 2. So if I do end up with a corrupt file, I always have version 1 to roll back to. And so this is something that a lot of software companies will do. Well, they'll have automated software for doing this, but we're not quite so rich being a public school. So we have to do this manually. So I'm going to save it as wheel version 2, save. And now I've got my wheel saved as 2 different files, and if something goes wrong with this file, I can always go back to the old. And that's it for our first part of the tutorial on Inventor.